what bothered me about it was all the offensive linemen who we really count on, like the center Ryan Kelly and Quentin Nelson coming out in support of this guy, and the Buffalo Bills snatch him up immediately. That's worrisome to me. But at the end of the day, it's either I think it was one of the two things, like you mentioned, either there was some personality conflicts behind the scenes, or after that lost to Kansas City because the line played so poorly. I think that was it. And it looked to me like everybody on the Colts acted like they were playing on roller skates. Nobody was moving fast. I think that the wet, snowy turf, I think, had an effect on them, which, that's the NFL. You play in the elements you're given, but it seemed like Kansas City obviously was much more comfortable with that messy field, whereas the Colts, everybody looked so tentative, especially in that first half in that game, including the offensive line. So it'll be interesting to see if it comes out ever why, because Frank Reich does seem like a good guy and a good coach, so it's hard to imagine him having a personality conflict with anybody. But, maybe there's a guy he's been waiting a year to hire that will make this offensive line even better. So I think at this point we have to wait and see. But I don't like the young guys who played so well, coming out in defense of this guy and saying, that they really support him, because I don't want this kind of dissension in our locker room.
Well, I get it completely. I was wondering why Quentin Nelson, rookie, he's like, hey, I'm all in. Okay, so we get it. We see what happens. But let's talk about the Colts, though. I mean, let's give them love. Let's give them prop. Hold your head high. I know I'm playing the homer card here, which I will always do for the Indianapolis Colts. But you included your coach is charged at the beginning of the season. Remember, thumbs up, thumbs down. I said, is Andrew Luck back? And I was the only one that had a thumbs up. So when you want to be in the greatness of God, because I'm on loan from God, Mo, just know that that there's repercussions to your thoughts early on in the season. No, I'm just razzing you. But at the same time, nobody thought the Colts would be here. Nobody thought Andrew Luck would be here. They had a great season. They were not a good team last week. They beat themselves. There's a lot of reasons why that happened. So it was to be expected. When you play the way they played last week, they lost. But at the same time, let's look back at their season. Andrew Luck made it through the entire season. He is back.
Yeah, I agree. He's 100% back. But if you look back, and one of the things that was hard for me to learn first off when I went to cover other teams for other radio networks like the Bears and the Browns was trying to hide my homerism at times for the Colts. But, if you look at those first couple of games, especially when they had to bring in Jacoby Brissett to throw the deep bomb, there was worries there. And now I have to be more of a closeted Colt fan because I cover the Browns extensively. But, there was worry there for me, and not because I didn't think Andrew Luck could get back. Quarterback who hurts his shoulder, we've perfected Tommy John surgery. We've perfected, ACLs and MCLs. But for quarterbacks and their shoulders, we haven't perfected that surgery yet. And obviously, if you look at, the fact that Cam Newton can sit out all of next year that they've talked about already this year, because of his shoulder injury, it's something that is hard for a quarterback to come back from. So, yeah, there was a lot of worries, but no doubt that he's back. And obviously what also helped him is having a good offensive line. Had Andrew Luck played behind the Ryan Grigson offensive line, there's no doubt in my mind he might be dead at this point, not just playing football, because, having time to throw the football, and I think he also learned in the past that he held on to the ball too long. So his release time became much quicker, especially more as the season went on, too. So, there's no doubt he's back. I think we've learned now that for quarterbacks who get shoulder surgery, it's a couple-year process, as we see now with Cam Newton. But, yeah, for sure, he's back. And while I doubted him, I didn't doubt him. I doubted the injury in his shoulder. And we were still waiting to see what we had with this offensive line. Quentin Nelson came out with a bunch of hoopla, but we still had to wait and see how the rest of it held up, and it held up great. But there was times at the beginning where it still looked a little dicey.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And, of course, I was just giving you a hard time. I think a lot of people, and I just sometimes you just got to toot your own horn. Jacoby Brissett,
sure.
You talked about Jacoby Brissett. I think he's in line to go somewhere else and make some different money. I think he's in line to go somewhere else to not be an Indianapolis Colts. I think he could actually be a starter in the NFL. Who wants him? What do we give up? I think that we could get more than a number 4 pick for him. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, there was a late push last year, draft day for him, and Chris Ballard decided not to trade him. And it was curious to see where Ballard came out and said that he didn't want to trade Jacoby Brissett just a week or so ago, and that wouldn't be happening, talking about how valuable he is to the team and how valuable of a quarterback he would be. But to me, that screams everything of, hey, this guy's valuable because I'm trying to drive the price up on trading him. I think now that you realize that Andrew Luck's back, you can move on from Jacoby Brissett. It is nice to have a backup who can come in and play football games and play and win games for you. But if you can get and Chris Ballard loves his draft picks, but if you can get a 2 or a 3 for him, a 3 is probably the rate you would probably get at this point, just because of his lack of starting experience other than last year. So I think if he gets an early third, that there's probably a chance that he does move him. But it'll be interesting to see, because you've got guys who are proven starters in this league who are probably going to be out there as well, and Joe Flacco and Nick Foles, plus Kyler Murray and Dwayne Haskins. So they're on a lot of teams are set as far as quarterbacks go. So it'll be interesting to see if Jacoby Brissett brings the value that Chris Ballard wants in order to move him.
Where does Nick Foles end up at?
It feels like me. If it were me and I was running the team, Jacksonville seems like the place, because you don't want to bring him into a situation where you're rebuilding, because that's just not who Nick Foles is. We saw it when he did play for the actual St. Louis Rams, that he was terrible for them. So I think that Jacksonville, who had a down season but yet is still primed with a pretty good defense to win, they just need to add to their receiving core. I think that would probably be the place. For all intents and purposes, obviously the Eagles, I think, would love to figure out a way to hold on to him. But if you have to franchise tag him, that's $26 million that he would make next year. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do franchise tag him and then try to trade him, just because I think that, and I think without the ball going off the hands of Alshon Jeffrey last week, I think Nick Foles drives him down and wins that football game. So I think Nick Foles has value. It'll be interesting to see if he can have value for an entire season, including the playoffs. But I think he needs to go off to a playoff-ready team, and I think that one probably is the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Well, we don't want to see him here in the AFC South. But Ed Kratz, by the way, I should mention, could not join us. He's coaching a wrestling match team today. So he will be joining us for the Super Bowl special, which will be coming up on Super Bowl Sunday. Let's talk a little bit about the Kansas City Chiefs and the New England Patriots. I know we don't want to say this, but the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl again, I'm not going to pass any bad juju or karma that way. I think Kansas City takes care of business this weekend at Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes gets the MVP. Andy Reid, Kool-Aid Man, can finally say, oh, yeah. And then I think that we see the beginning of the end of a dynasty in New England. Can we all be in agreement of that? Can we all pass that karma and juju that way?
Well, it seems like we've been trying to do that for 6 years now,
yeah,
and Tom Brady and Bill Belichick always figure it out. I think that you saw a down year from this team a little bit because of injuries and suspensions. I think that hurt this team a lot, and sometimes the moves that Bill Belichick has made this year didn't work. If it wasn't, I honestly believe last year, if Malcolm Butler played in that football game, that the Patriots at this point would probably be back-to-back champions. I think that was a huge mistake, and maybe it's not Tom Brady that's on his last legs. That maybe it's more of Bill Belichick. We saw the curious move. Just think if Gronk's not playing center field in that loss against that last-second loss to the Dolphins this year, this game today or tomorrow is in New England, not in Kansas City. So that call right there alone, made sure that this game's played in Kansas City tomorrow and not in New England. But I think this game will depend on the Kansas City defense again, coming up big like they did against the Colts, but coming up big too with Gronk, because when they lost late in the game earlier this year in that high-scoring game in New England, it was 2 big pass plays to Gronk that set up that game-winning field goal by Steven Gostkowski. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they cover Gronk. Gronk in that game earlier this year was not really a factor the entire game until that last drive they needed to win that football game against the Kansas City Chiefs. But if this defense can play like it played last week, and now Eric Berry will play this week, their safety, who's been out most of the year after injuring his toe, will play. So I think that that Kansas City definitely has a good shot at winning this football game. But when you look at the history and the trends, it's really hard to count out New England. I think this game is definitely, great that Kansas City was able to get home field advantage. Because I honestly don't think that Kansas City wins the football game going into New England for the AFC Championship. So it seems like an even game. Vegas rates it an even game. The only reason that the Chiefs are given the 3 points is because it's at home. So it seems like an even up game. It should be a fun game to watch.
Well, I tell you what, I said it earlier. So we've got a couple things going in our favor. We got the eclipse, the new covering the old, and when you add up Tom Brady's jersey, you get 3. I'm just saying. Let's talk a little bit about our porn star loving friend Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that was a sign of what's going on within the Patriots organization, or am I reading into the tea leaves too much with that trade over to San Francisco?
Well, I think it was Tom Brady pushing Robert Kraft to get Bill Belichick to move him, and I think Bill Belichick's big middle finger back to Robert Kraft was the fact that he only got a second for him, because Jimmy Garoppolo, earlier that year at draft time, they were offered a 1 and a 3, and they didn't take it because they wanted to hold on to him. And Bill Belichick, I think, was planning on, this season or next year to be when Jimmy Garoppolo took over. So I think the hand was forced by Tom Brady to Robert Kraft, and then Robert Kraft forced Bill Belichick to move him, and so that's why Bill took a second and just kind of said, here, F you back. So. I think there's still some dissension in the ranks between not only Belichick and Kraft, but Belichick and Tom Brady. Tom hasn't had a terrible year by any stretch. It's just that this team hasn't been the dominant force that we've seen, that we're used to every year, and I think a lot of it has to do with injuries and some personnel moves. But again, they've been played in the AFC Championship 8 straight years for a reason, which is unreal to think of. And when Tom Brady raises his right hand, there's rings for all 5 of those fingers. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
We're talking with Mo from the BS Sports Show. Mo, we rely on you to help us bet the safe bets and stay away from the non-safe bets. So let's get into some betting talk here. We got Vegas talking, obviously divisional rounds. We know there's the 3-point advantage to the Chiefs if you're betting money in Vegas or non-Vegas or whatever against the Chiefs and the Patriots. Where do you put your money? Because you know the Patriots are going to cover the spread.
Well, you hope, but it feels like both of these games are such small point spreads. You feel like one of them might get out of hand, and it's just you got to figure out which one that is. And if the Patriots lose by a field goal, then you're a push and you don't lose anything. But I think at this point for this game in particular, it depends on which team you decide you like better. Because if you take the Patriots and they're a straight AFC Championship game, you're getting 3 points. So we got a little room for error. If you're taking the Chiefs and you're given the 3 points, you got to make sure that that's the team that you really love and you love them because they're at home and you think they can score points. So at this point, when it's this late in the year and it's a 3-point spread, it comes down to who you like more and what kind of risk you want to take in this football game. Obviously, if you can take the Patriots and get 3 points, it seems like the safe bet, even if you think the Chiefs will win and you think they win by a small margin. So this is a game that I'm probably not going to bet just because I don't feel one way or another about one team, 3 points or more. So I'll probably lay off of this game. But taking the Patriots +3 doesn't seem like the worst idea.
Eric Berry, how much is the Berry effect in this game?
Well, I mean, obviously he's fresh from the standpoint of he's missed a bunch of games this year, but you're talking probably about a wet turf on a guy coming off a foot or toe injury. You wonder what that'll be like for him on that football field. So obviously you got to win to make it to the Super Bowl. So it'll be interesting to see how much they use him. Thinking if they are going to make it to the Super Bowl to have him fresh to play on that turf. But it'll be interesting to see early on how he's able to adjust to the wet grass there in Kansas City with coming off a almost season-long foot and toe injury.
Now, I know you're on there in Vegas, and I know you guys talk betting there in Vegas, but it seems like everything that I'm seeing, Vegas likes the Los Angeles